Chorus Voices, the podcast brought to you by Chorus, a fresh approach to community service. Settle in, listen in, and enjoy the voices who bring you reflections, musings, and stories from our community.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Chorus Voices. I'm Dan Minchin, CEO of Chorus.
And I'm Lou Forster, Head of Brand and People at Chorus.
So Lou, what is on the storyboard today?
Today we're going to have a conversation about homelessness or being at risk of homelessness.
And particularly amongst the older population. And we're going to look into some of the factors that make this both a growing risk, a growing challenge for us as a society, but also really a hidden one because it kind of doesn't end up on the front page of any kind of newspaper or a digital newspaper. And it's probably not something people are really even that aware of.
No, I think people assume homelessness often is people living on the streets, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg. I think the definition of homelessness is a unstable environment or a insecure tenure where you don't know where your next place will be. So sleeping on couches or in your car, things like that. So a lot of homelessness is unseen, and particularly we don't tend to see older people on the streets so much either.
And many people, I guess, take their sort of tenure over their home somewhat for granted. I guess all of us, live with uncertainty around that to some degree. But this is an extreme level of uncertainty, and I can imagine what it would be like to sort of only be a car accident or a hospital visit or a sudden change in circumstances away from literally having nowhere to stay. And then what that leads to people doing is choosing to live in a situation which is unsafe, or not even really choosing it. Kind of ending up in that space. And that's what today's story is about, isn't it?
Absolutely. Before we get into the story, I was just thinking about, as a business, sometimes we're talking in terms of, how long we could run the business if we didn't have any income. And I think it's possibly similar in a home environment. If you live alone or if you're with a partner and one or both of you are out of work or you have no income, it's finite. It can be finite, the amount of time before you run out of funds to be able to stay where you're staying. So, and we talked earlier about when your base is so thin, it only takes one incident to happen. Disruption. Someone's ill or an accident or a breakup or something.
And some of those risks are more prevalent for older people. And of course, there's lots of stories where they don't come to pass, but the loss of a loved one or the sort of lack of superannuation, for example, which is often
women,
very much a problem for women, or falling through the cracks of the system somehow. And today, the story is a really touching one, quite upsetting in lots of ways, but ultimately with a really positive conclusion for a gentleman named Andrew who found himself living in a situation that was really not right. Chorus team came along to meet with Andrew and quickly realised that things needed to change.
Yeah, let's have a listen.
So I went out to do an assessment with Andrew, and he had just been referred to us here at the Regional Assessment Service for some services in the home, which was mainly Meals on Wheels and possibly a little bit of domestic assistance, I think. Anyway, during the assessment, he did tell me that he's been evicted from his property and he needs to find somewhere else to live, and that was in a period of 10 days that was going to be happening, so he needed to find somewhere quickly. And it was a real dilemma. He didn't have anywhere to go, and his carer and friend, very good friend Karen, was with him, and she was also at a loss as to where Andrew was going to move into. Andrew was very emotional during the assessment. He has some significant health issues, really affecting his mobility, but very down in regards to his living situation. And he was living in a property which needed a lot of work. It had become quite unsafe for him to live in, so he needed to move out quite quickly. So during our discussion with Andrew and Karen, I said that I would refer him to the ARCH program, Assistance with Community and Housing. I couldn't guarantee that a place would be found for him, but I would certainly refer him through to the program that Chorus runs. The living situation wasn't good for him. The house, it needed a lot of repairs. For instance, the bathroom He wasn't even able to have a shower, so there were all termites in the bathroom. The bath it was a high bath for him to step over. He has mobility issues, so that was a big problem for him, very slippery, no rails in the house. It needed a lot of maintenance work. He was very emotional, and he didn't initially say that he was being evicted, but during our conversation it came up. He was crying throughout the assessment quite a lot, and really quite helpless, and asking for any help we could give him. He lived on the landscaping supplies. There was a property on there that he lived in, but the house was in disrepair. It was terrible. The owners who owned the business, they owned the house that he lived in. They had a guard dog for the business, and I did want to go and have a look, but they said because the guard dog was there, it wasn't a good idea. When you go up and you park there, it's like you're parking to buy whatever you need for your garden, but you're actually going to the house to do an assessment.
Would that in any way affect his health or?
Yeah, probably the dust and everything would be, yeah. He had been sick, which I think is why he fell behind with his rent and all his bills. And he had an agreement with the owners that, he would sort of organise the maintenance and that kind of thing, but that had all sort of fallen by the wayside. And the house, I think the house just needs to be knocked down. There was workers around, and they were on a little dingoes and that kind of thing, moving soil. They just said, oh, no, don't go out the back. Yeah, don't go out the back. I know it puts you off, and everything was so overgrown out the back that I looked through a window and I couldn't even really see anything.
So he didn't go out the back then, clearly? No? He wouldn't have gone out in his garden in that case?
No, I don't think so.
No.
And Karen came and did a lot of the chores and, the things around the house for him, his washing and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't think he would have had difficulty hanging out his washing.
We were in despair with Andrew, trying to get him rehomed or rehoused because of where he was living was not suitable, area of where he was living, where we were put in contact with Chorus and met Gloria, who virtually got an email on the Friday afternoon of urgency of how it was, where Gloria got in contact with us first thing Monday morning in regards to meeting up with Andrew and myself, which we then did at 11 o'clock. It just seemed to happen so quickly.
I went to see him the same day, and before I went there, I went through to what type of accommodation he can have straight away, because the referrals say he need to be moved as soon as possible from where he lived. Where he was living, he can have a shower once a week. And
why is that? Because it was so dirty?
No, because he's got too much problem with his legs. He can't walk properly. Mm-hmm. His mobility is really, really bad. And the shower was on the top of a big bath, so he can't go into the shower.
Yeah.
So he's been. Over. When I saw him, I was thinking maybe he need a hostel, residential care. But he asked me, please, Gloria, don't put me in a nursing home, because he's still driving. It's better for him to go to independent living. And he's still going to have a little money in his pocket after pension.
And then Gloria had already done her homework and got us into seeing some residentials. She picked us up and drove us there, and we were still looking at each other going, what's happening? Because these kind of things don't normally happen that quick, or I had never heard of Chorus until that moment. So we went and saw a possibility of where we could put Andrew and find him some amazing housing. Finding out that they had about 5 of these different premises throughout Perth, and in the meantime had taken Andrew to different appointments with with Social Security on his pension and address changing, or just finding out what he could afford. We went and saw this other premises, which was amazing, and before we know it, on that Wednesday, with the help of Chorus and Gloria, was incredible again, because we got approval of getting him in that week. So from going from total despair to what are we going to do, to a life-changing moment for Andrew, where on that Friday he was moved in. And we've never looked back, and so grateful for what this opportunity has given him, and knowing that he's somewhere safe for me as I work away a lot.
I hear that it was a quite awful situation that he was living in.
Yeah, we were desperate. Talk so much about Chorus now because I wasn't aware of it. Wanted to nominate Gloria for outstanding work because, you know, without her and of who she is, you know, the trust that you give someone like that is just, you know, you just don't get service like that anymore. And she was amazing, and Drew felt very comfortable and safe with her, and she changed everything. Like, we went to appointments with him, to Medicare. Just a service that's a credit to you. And Frances, without Frances, mate, doing
Karen.
that fast track.
Oh, no, it's Gloria's the real star.
You know what? Because if we weren't put onto Gloria at that stage, and Frances, you know, we were put there for Meals on Wheels, something that wasn't what we were even thinking of at the time.
Yeah.
We thought it was something completely different. And if Frances hadn't have sat there and listened to Drew, which she did so amazingly, and went outside what she was there to do, which a lot don't do, and made this happen by going to someone else and giving him that hope when she was there to say, I'm going to speak to someone that may be able to help me. You know, we wouldn't have met Chorus, we wouldn't have met Gloria without Frances. So the whole picture of both of them is a huge part of our lives of gratitude. And if Frances is there right now, I want to give her a big hug down the phone because she made us
big hug, big group hug. We've got Gloria and Frances both here. So
they're both angels.
I'll give them a hug for you.
And I still get emotional thinking what they've done for him. It's incredible. Thank you.
Well, what an amazing story, Lou.
It really, really is. It hits pretty hard for me, actually. However, I do like to hear about the stories where Chorus have been involved in enabling someone to live a life. And then, you know, our purpose is to enable people to live the life they choose. But I firmly believe, you know, we need safety and security before we can start thinking about that sort of choice. I think about Cecile's story we had in the previous podcast. And, you know, for a completely different situation, but her tenure where she was living was insecure.
She was sort of found herself living with family, and it was really not okay, and ultimately led to a situation of quite serious financial abuse and emotional abuse.
Yeah,
like that's why this is hidden. Like, that probably wouldn't be classified as a conversation or a story about homelessness, but it was that sort of sense of being trapped and not able to get out and have any real options.
You know, after having the options and settling into that, you know, creating a life, then she flourished and got back into you know, her knitting and everything. Yeah. So, you know, the parallels are quite strong there for me. Yeah,
and I think, you know, we do talk about enabling people to live the life they choose, and we really, when we're at our best, what we're doing to make that happen is to create an environment, an atmosphere where people do have support, they have networks, they have relationships, they have connections, and they have a sense of kind of purpose. Very often what happens in these situations is for the most basic of reasons, i.e. I don't have somewhere safe to live. Those things are just not possible. And even because they're absent, the connections aren't there, the meaningful kind of work or volunteerism or belonging isn't there, people sort of fall through the cracks. And I also think that the system, if you like, the legislative framework, the funding arrangements, the way that the system works doesn't necessarily catch people like this, because they really do slip through the cracks.
They do, and I think both Andrew and Cecile were isolated. You know, they had
Very
limited
much.
people involved in their lives, and
that should almost be the red flag.
Yeah,
right? You know?
yeah, definitely, and let's all look out for the people around us in our communities. You know, and keep an eye on them. The neighbour day is all about reconnecting with the people around us and checking in, the things that we've kind of stopped doing perhaps in this kind of more connected digitally but less personally
somehow
world.
And so this is what motivates all of us to come to work every day, and when we hear a story like that, I kind of feel proud to be part of Chorus.
Definitely. The work Gloria and team are doing around, you know, helping people find secure housing is fabulous, and then moving on to, you know, finding a great life.
Well, another great story for the Chorus Voices podcast, Lou. Thanks very much for being part of it.
Thanks, Dan.
And let's acknowledge Judith also, who put together the story.
Thanks for listening to Chorus Voices, the podcast brought to you by Chorus. If you like our show and wanted to know more, check out our website at chorus.org.au. And please leave a review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and it helps others find us and enjoy the podcast as well. Join us next time for more inspiring stories and news from our community. Chorus, a fresh approach to community service.